And see, that's why no matter what's going on around me, I can just look out and I can look around and I look at the friends that He's placed in my life, and I'm thankful for it. We don't have time to focus on what's going on around us. We have to look up. We have to look up. Second part He had to do, and this is an important part. He, first of all, write it in your Bibles, He looked upward, but now He's got to look inward. And one cried unto it. I'm going to start in verse 4. And the post of the door moved at the voice of him that cried. He didn't cry out. Who was crying out? The angels were crying out. At their cry, something happened. I didn't get that until this last night. At their cry, something happened. That's what it said. At their cry, the post of the door moved, and the voice of him that cried, and the house was filled with smoke. When the presence of God came on the scene at their voice. If we want the presence of God to show up in His house and show up in full glory, then it's going to come from our cry. God's not going to show up where He's not wanted. And He's not going to always show up the way we want Him to show up, because here He was showing up and He was angry. Because you see, if you'll go back to the first 5 chapters, it was woe unto everybody else. But when you get to chapter 6, the scene changes. It's easy for us, and we're the best at it as Christians. We'll say woe on everybody else. But what about us? And right here it says, Then I said in verse 5, Then I said, Woe is me! For I am undone, because I am a man of unclean lips, and I dwell in the midst of a people of unclean lips. For mine eyes have seen the King, the Lord of hosts. You see, the scene changed from woe unto everybody else unto woe unto me. Because I am a man of unclean lips, and I dwell with a people of unclean lips. And unclean lips represent an unclean heart. Because out of the heart the mouth speaks. So the unclean lips represented an unclean heart. Listen, we're talking to a man that has seen Jesus, that had a vision. And if he's unclean, I can assure you that you are. Who, me? Yes, you. There's not a person in this house that has that does not have some kind of uncleanliness in them. Some kind. Yours might be different than somebody else's, and somebody else's might be different than yours, but it's still there. And it is what it is. Mine eyes have seen the King of hosts. Then flew one of the seraphims unto me, having a live coal in his hand. You see what I like about that? There was nothing dead in that. You see, the throne was good, but the throne without the altar, there had to be an altar. That altar was important. That altar was very important. Because you see, that altar represents laying some things down, healing. You see, you could have the throne, but you see, and you could have conviction. But without the altar, you couldn't have the healing. You could have the throne, but you had to have the two. The two combined together was the effectiveness. And they went to the altar and they got a live coal. It was burning. Some things had to be burned away. A live coal, nothing dead anymore. You see, we're still wanting to be changed by something dead because it'll keep us dead. That God's wanting to touch us with fire. Because fire will bring a purging and fire will bring a cleansing, and touched him with a live coal from the altar. And when he touched his lips, he healed him. Because the lips represented the heart. When we get touched by God, we get touched with something real. Will you live a perfect life? No, you won't. Can you? Yeah, if you strive. Oh, that got quiet. When we decrease and He increases. When we die daily, nobody wants to die. I'm not talking about a physical death. Come on, stay spiritual with me, church. And he laid it upon my mouth and said, Lo, this has touched my lips, and my iniquity is taken away, and thy sin is purged. I'm glad that when God touches us, He forgives us, and it's forgotten. It's done. You see, the thing that won't let it be done is man. Keep wanting to bring up somebody's past, bring up somebody's history. I'm going to tell you, for every bit of history you bring up on somebody, you've got a history too. For everything that you hold against somebody, they can hold a whole lot more against you. And a lot of times we'll bring up somebody else's history so to make our history smell good and look good in our eyes. And yours stinks just as bad. Yours is just as ugly. But what's been touched has been touched. And once he realized that he had to look up to see that God was still in control, then he had to look inward and take care of himself. And then he could look outward. And you see, the problem is a lot of people are trying to go out and do the work of the Lord before they take care of the first two steps of preparation. There was preparation in the first two steps. The first step of preparation was looking up, and the second step of preparation was looking in. But the third step of preparation, now it's going past the preparation stage, and it's going into the serving stage. And you know what? A lot of people have those two things out of order, and they're trying to go do before they're prepared to go and do. And if we'll take care of the preparation stages in our life, then the third step, which is going outward, will work. You see, it's the reason we're seeing a rapid decline in Christianity and in the church is because there's some steps out of order in the church, in the Christian believers. There's a lot of people trying to teach a Sunday school class. There's a lot of people trying to go out and witness. There's a lot of people trying to go out and do something when they hadn't taken care of the first two steps in their life. First of all, they hadn't recognized that God's still on the throne. And second, they hadn't realized that, hey, there's issues in my life that I've got to get right. And then when we take care of all that, then look what he says. I also heard the voice of the Lord saying, whom shall I send, and who will go with me? Who will go for us? Then I said, here am I, send me. You see, a lot of people will say, here am I, send me. Only in 6 months you don't hear about them no more. God is not sending you for a week or two to do something. If He called you, He has appointed you until He comes back for you. It might not be the situation that you want, and it might not be all rosy and pretty. But when he told Isaiah, he said, "Here," and Isaiah said, "Here am I, send me." Then when he realized where God was sending him, he said, "How long?" Because it wasn't exactly the picture that he was really wanting to go to. Once God commissioned him to go, and he said, "Here am I, send me." Boy, don't that sound good? We like to sound all godly. We like to sound like the perfect, pretty little Christian. Here am I, send me, Lord, I'll go. And we'll smile and we'll think we're being all doing our duty as a Christian and being all proud of it and just throwing our little chest out. And then with the first little bit of opposition,